I wanted to welcome you to this technologically bizarre and marvelous live stream on Giving Tuesday. At Three Generations, we tell stories and make films, and in so doing, our work protects the truth for posterity. Preserving cultural patrimony is part of that and something we proclaim and cherish at Three Generations. And I'm really excited tonight to introduce you to our three brilliant panelists who, due to the wonders of 21st century technology, come to you from across the Americas. I am in Connecticut in the United States on land that once belonged to the Paugussett tribe. First, I would like to welcome Alex Stark, who is a practitioner of Feng Shui and European geomancy, who is presently in Florida. Hi, Alex. Maybe you can wave, Alex. And
I think my mic is unmuted now. So
yeah.
Hi, everybody.
There was just some interesting stuff going on there. And next up is Dr. Byron Baker, who is a physician from the MHA Nation in North Dakota, who is presently in Bismarck. Hi, Byron.
Hi, everybody.
And lastly, Puma Quispe, who is a community leader and shaman who is in Chintero, Peru. And I'm really thrilled to have all of you here. I think that today, as well as being Giving Tuesday, we find ourselves in the middle of a global pandemic. And I think it's exciting and important to bring different views and perspectives about the state of the world together. So first, I thought we could start by talking a little bit about how sick the world truly is. And then we might move on through sickness to ideas for healing and change. So Byron, I thought we'd start with you, as you are an MD and you exist, at least in your day job, in the sort of Western allopathic world of medicine. Would you just tell us a little bit about what's going on with the pandemic in your community there in North Dakota?
Well, the reservations have been hit pretty hard, and historically that's always been the case. Reservations tend to end up with any number of infectious diseases, and you take what's happening nationwide and multiply it, and then you have your reservation numbers. I've lost friends, and it's been hard. And to talk to people locally in Bismarck who don't believe this or believe it's some sort of a Democrat tactic, I mean, it's just amazing. I had a 44-year-old friend with no medical problems. He died. He's gone, and we've lost a lot of our important elders. We look to our elders for our connection to the past and for how we should live our lives, and we're losing them too because of their age. They're particularly vulnerable to this particular disease, this coronavirus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm glad that you are here and well, and I see you're wearing your scrubs or whatever you call that. Next, I thought I'd like to talk to Puma about how COVID is impacting your community there in Chintero.
Thank you, Jane. Wonderful to be here with my wonderful sister and brothers. Thank you to my global family and my global community. Our Mother Earth is taking us through a process of healing that, while it was optional in the past, now is mandatory. We all have to go through this process, yes or yes. And as healers, what we want to constantly pray for is that this transition, awakening process, healing process happens in the most gentle way possible. It is already very hard. It is already very intense. And like my brother Byron said, in the indigenous communities, we have a lot of vulnerable people who have no access to government support, who have no access to good health systems that can protect them. So of course, our government systems collapsed. And the only thing that prevailed was the natural herbal medicine that people know here, that luckily is still alive in the traditions of our people. and it can boost our immune system. It can protect ourselves even in these times of pandemics. We need to go back to Mother Earth and ask her for her support, because she is our first ally in any times of struggle and suffering we go through, like we're going through right now.
Cool. Okay, I like the idea of mandatory healing. Alex, I just thought it would be interesting if you would talk to us about where you feel this pandemic and the state of the world comes in the sort of the history of the cosmos, really.
Yeah, sure. I'm delighted to bring that topic up. And Jane knows my views on this, and she's coaxing me into them. It's not something I always talk about because given what I do, I'm a geomancer. And for those of you who don't know what a geomancy is, we study how the land interacts with people. So our view of history and our view of healing and health and wellness and of disease is very long. So we're talking about geological processes, really, because we look at landform, the energy in the land, the formation of valleys, the formation of ecosystems, in a very broad scale. So we're talking about hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years. And the fact is that the Earth, from the perspective of humans, can be said to be very sick. It's not terminal, because there are enormous resources in the cosmos that will support nature as such. But in relation to humans, nature is sick because it's having a harder time supporting the type of lifestyles, the type of activities that we want her to support. And this story started up, 10, 12,000 years ago when humans invented technology, when we came up with bigger and stronger weapons to kill game, when we invented social systems that allowed us to coordinate the hunt in particular in a much broader way, and also thought processes that allowed us to create stories to cover up our tracks. So it became okay to wipe out the woolly mammoth. It became okay to destroy whole ecosystems as we produced more, consumed more, and ultimately injured the system of the planet itself in more injurious ways over time. And Puma's right. This is the moment of reckoning. I mean, scientists are telling it to us from one perspective. Traditional healers are talking about it from a different one. From my perspective, the Earth will persist, but the question is whether we will persist. And with us, and the sad part to me is that we can drag everything else with us. I live in Florida. I used to scuba dive in the Keys out here. 20 years ago, it was lush, magnificent coral. Today, it's dead. It's gone. It's finished. It's not a question of losing a few individuals. It's the question of losing the entire system. So for me, that's the concern. Where are we headed with this, and how do we try to figure a way to manage it?
Okay. So I guess then one question I have immediately is, which I'd like to ask each of you in turn, is do you think this, which is probably the first global pandemic, at least of the technological age, how would you see it as a manifestation of the need for us to start healing and a reckoning and a realignment?
Absolutely. Just to continue on that track, I think Puma touched on it already. The reason we're seeing these types of things, at least from the kind of biomedical perspective, is that we're infiltrating areas of nature that don't belong to us. In this case, it looks like the pathogen, the virus came from bats, and everybody knows that story. Question is, what the hell were we doing with the bats? Why were we damaging? And from the indigenous perspective, the bat is a very important creature. It's a messenger. It's a transmuter. It lives in in the dark and the light. So the message to me is very clear. We have to fix. We have to adapt. We have to figure out a way to stop telling us stories that justify these processes that that allow us to continue to to destroy in order to heal this. And for me, it has to be collective. But ultimately we have to redefine how we think about the entire system. It's a very, very important thing we need to do, and it's probably the most important thing we'll ever have to do.
Wow. Okay, well, I'd like to pop back to Byron on the bat question, if you like, because Byron, you're somebody who exists in both these worlds, right? You as a medical practitioner and as a Native American and a member of your tribe. How do you balance those two opposing ideas, and what does the bat represent to you?
Well, like Alex was saying, if we infiltrate areas of the earth where we should not be, then there are going to be consequences. And, you know, the African hemorrhagic fevers were thought to have originated from somewhere deep within the jungle. And those, if you'll recall, those are terrible viruses. And if we had just kept our populations in areas that we're supposed to live, you know, Mother Earth is kind. But if we start to infiltrate these areas, then Mother Earth will defend herself. And to a certain extent, I believe that you know, these viruses, these new viruses that show up, I believe it is Mother Earth telling us that we're not living right, and we have a chance to get right with this, but our time, the clock is ticking, and we have to get more people to have a connection with the earth that they walk on every day. They have to believe that the earth is our mother. We come from the earth, we return to the earth. We have to take care of the earth, or the consequences will be grave.
Okay. Well, Puma, do you want to sort of share your perspective there of this interaction between what we, you know, Westerners bring to your community, and whether that's good or bad for you?
Thank you, Jane. We are now a global community, and we have evolved to a global consciousness. You know, some years ago, it was just my village. It was just this little territory. And all of a sudden, some years after, now we need to think about a whole planetary human family and the whole of Mother Earth. So what I believe is shame, guilt does not serve us. We have gone through that hard process of hurting our planet and of bringing too much unbalance. And now is time, because we can, time to bring the balance and equilibrium back. Just like we were incompetent in taking good care of our planet, we also can, when we wake up our consciousness, be more responsible and be better on this planet. You know, we need to be not only conscious, not only aware that Mother Earth is alive, but we also need to be respectful of that, because she is a life intelligence, life being that exists in a higher frequency than we do. We believe she has the last word. If we live our lives too much out of balance, we can only do that so much until Mother Earth says, okay, no more. And that is what my brothers were sharing before too. The consequences could be terrible, but neither that fear serves us. We have the power of will, we have the intelligence, we have the power to bring back balance and equilibrium to our planet. If we don't begin now, then the next generations will not receive that example and that call. So we need to start in our own lives, in our own homes. We need to wake up every day knowing that the land we step on is sacred and is alive. Just that will change the lives for generations.
You know, I think Puma touched on something there, which is, you know, talking about Mother Earth, and Mother Earth by her nature is feminine. And I wanted to sort of pop this to you, Alex, but as we have three men here and I'm representing the, how much do we need to start just by the consciousness that the earth upon which we walk is feminine, and how much have we perhaps not paid attention to the feminine energies over the last centuries?
Well, you know, I mentioned the issue of storytelling, something that interests me very deeply, because it's I think at the core of human relationships and how we relate to nature. And one of the stories that, one of the problems with storytelling is that it can be used for multiple purposes. There are traditional stories that tell the truth of nature and our relationship to it, but many, many, many other stories, many of which we learn in school and in universities, tell a very different story that cover, as I said, they cover our tracks and make it okay to misbehave. And I think the story of misogyny, is one of the big ones. In many cultures, it's okay to denigrate, to belittle, to minimize, to contain the power of the feminine. And again, if you look at the historical record, we've been doing it for at least since the Neolithic era. Göbekli Tepe in Turkey may have been the last time when there was a slight balance, and that was 12,000 years ago. Ever since, we've been subjugating it. And then on top of that, once you deny the feminine, you can deny nature, because nature is by nature feminine. You can deny the mother, and then you can abuse and objectify the feminine. And that leads us into, of course, genocide and war and all these other processes that are also destructive. And again, going back to Puma is 100% correct that the key to the whole thing is how to latch on back to the feeling of love, compassion, of integration, of stability, of clear-hearted, detachment of these stories that keep bouncing in our heads, and go back to the traditional, original ways of looking at it. It's a long process. I have no particular hopes that it'll happen in my lifetime or my children's lifetime, because it took us 10,000 years to get here, like I said before. But the next 5,000 years are going to be interesting.
Okay, we do have a couple of questions, so I'm just going to throw them out. And then one of them is, how does this pandemic differ from all previous pandemics? And I guess that's a Byron question, right?
Well, this one has the ability to kill at a much higher rate, probably at least 10 times the ability to kill people that a typical influenza pandemic would have. Mortality rates differ, but I saw northern Italy had close to 10% mortality when this first started. And there aren't very many infectious diseases out there with that kind of mortality. And so when we look at this thing from a strictly westernized medicine point of view, it's dangerous. And it has the ability to cause other organ systems to fail. It is causing strokes. It's causing blood clots in the lungs, which is a pulmonary embolism. And we're seeing a lot of, especially elderly people who live through the illness. Now they're tired all the time. They're short of breath. They have fibrosis in their lungs, which is scar tissue in the lungs, which typically takes years to develop. You don't just develop that, but with coronavirus, you do. Mm-hmm. And so we're still learning about this virus and what it can do. And I think we're going to uncover more as time goes on. It has, as yet, undefined effects on the central nervous system, your brain. And we don't know yet what exactly that's going to mean long-term to folks who've had this illness.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah, one does wonder if some of the deniers maybe have had a dose of brain affliction, but that's just me. What could be a way to confront as a species our moral failures without succumbing completely to guilt and nihilism? I think, Puma, you touched on that a bit, but maybe we could go back and talk about that shame and guilt really are not productive at this point in time, are they? We have to sort of shift forward.
Jane, I had an idea, if I could.
Yes, you.
Christianity has a history of incorporating the beliefs of native cultures. Why couldn't we meet with the Pope and ask him to incorporate some Native American spirituality into the church? I think that would, we would start getting younger people involved. They are involved at this point, but we need more of them. Mm-hmm. And the way to get some of these people is through their churches. And Christianity has a history of doing so. They incorporate things into their belief system. So why not incorporate some American Indian spiritual beliefs? The earth is our mother. We have to care for her. We have to be stewards of the land. All of these things could be incorporated into Christianity, and I don't think anybody would blink an eye.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Puma, do you want to talk a little bit about how we find a positive way forward?
Yes. So what Byron said is very important. What you believe becomes true, and our belief systems are still limiting and conditioning, especially those that come from religion, those that come from spirituality. Even in our own land, we have a lot of belief systems that no longer serves us. And we need to transcend all of those by liberating and freeing ourselves from conditioning and limitations. You know, in these times of pandemic, we have really learned about we can no longer take for granted our life, and that there is really no systems that can assure you that your life is for you. So for this reason, we need to live our lives every day as the best offering in gratitude and in return for the infinite blessings that we receive from life, to our family, to our community. Loving ourselves unconditionally is the best step. And then loving our family and our community unconditionally is the next step. Mm-hmm. We must transcend all these conditionings and limitations we have of the mind and of our heart. Our hearts are too heavy. During this pandemic, we have accumulated so much heavy energy in our hearts because of fear, because of guilt, because of shame, because of blame, because of doubt. So we need to transcend ourselves from these heavy emotions, from these heavy energies. And we can only do that by loving ourselves unconditionally and by loving unconditionally. Mm-hmm. This is the most powerful medicine at these times. And we need to believe. We need to believe in our new life. We need to believe in the new era. We need to believe that even if we come from thousands of years of limited consciousness and unevolved humanity, we're right now in times when that is changing. And I love what Alex said, you know, it might take us another 5,000 years to really see what those changes will be like, but we're the beginning step. We're the only generation that are in times of the transition. Our ancestors thousands of years ago prayed for being alive in these times, and our future generations will talk about us thousands of years from now, and they will talk about the steps we've taken in transition and into this new era. Open your hearts and love unconditionally.
Thank you. That's a very humbling message. I think that, you know, we live so much in the moment, and the idea that our life could be of service for others is, I mean, for future humanity is sometimes a difficult concept when we're so fixated on the now. Alex, do you want to sort of just jump in on that too now?
Yeah, you know, I couldn't agree more with Puma. But I'm a practical man too, so I think we need to do a couple other things in between. One of them is that I think we need to surrender power to women. I think it's an imperative.
I didn't quite.
We have to surrender power to women. Okay. Not just to the feminine concept and the feminine ideal and nature and all that, you know, storytelling, but literally political and social power to women, to the women, to the grandmothers. Because, you know, the history of this problem is intimately tied with the dominion of the male over the female, of the patriarchal systems that took over the power of the matriarchies of the matriarchal systems. To me, it's a practical imperative, and I know it comes from a position of kind of, you know, we can discuss it, but I see it as a fundamental thing that we have to do. The other thing I think, which I always advise all of the people who come to me for advice, is the fundamental need to simplify. Things have gotten way too complicated, you know, and they've gotten complicated because it's possible to complicate them through technology, through organizational systems. So that same kind of mental thing that happens with humans are really good at, but which is destructive to everything else. So, in developed societies, simplify, reduce your footprint, consume less, produce less. And societies that are not in that level of development, find ways to contain the so-called development of progress, of larger economies, of consumer economies. And that's something that I think that the idea that Byron proposed of talking to the Pope and talking to people like that I think is brilliant, because it has to spread into the mainstream.
Yeah, and I mean, it is interesting that this exact moment we're speaking, we see the Biden administration adding, an all-women female comms team, more women in positions of power, and similarly, I'm thinking about the country with the most exemplary response to COVID is New Zealand, with a female leader. So it's like there's evidence there if we choose to see it, and perhaps even in this country there may be, God willing, or there will be some progress. But I guess one of the things that I wanted to ask a little bit about is, if we are to start from a place of love, and more love and empathy and compassion, it seems sort of bizarre or ironic to me that we are also in this moment where there's so much bifurcation and hate, and people seem, more, living in parallel universes of what truth is and consciousness. So it feels like it may never have been harder to find love,
Yeah, and I think that's why Puma's message is so critical, because in many ways, when you get disconnected from nature, you also lose the capacity to love, because love is the glue that binds nature together. It's at the core of the whole thing. And the more disconnected you are from nature, from natural processes, from Pachamama, from the ordinary stuff of nature, the animals, the trees, the land, your heart becomes more and more rigid. And the question about like, how do you take people that are rigid and help them to open? How do you take yourself when you find you're rigid? This happens to me all the time. I find that, that calcification in my entire being. When I look at it, I see this whole process unfolding. I think it's, sometimes it's difficult, but the imperative is to find that within ourselves, and then to take that message and to show it to the next generation, to show through our effort, whether it be, successful or not, the path. And then we can start to, point towards a resolution and a lightness. I think that's the one thing about, I'm Peruvian as well, by the way, as with Puma. And that's the one thing I love about my culture, the message, that lightness, the dance of life, that we recognize.
Mm-hmm. Well, actually, Byron, I wanted to ask you a little bit about, calcification then, because you are operating, in one of the most, reactionary, blinkered communities in America, with the highest, morbidity rate of anywhere in the country. And you have to deal with this every day, don't you? As a physician, you have to heal people. I mean, you've told me you have people coming in with Nazi regalia and you treat them. How do you use your indigenous wisdom, and how does that help you? And what are the lessons for the rest of us in that?
I try to approach that like they just don't know what they're doing. And if they can be taught something different, they'll be improved for it. And I'm improved for it for having taught it to them. And if we can teach, I was able to teach this Nazi guy from South Carolina that it is not a good idea to walk through a community with a Nazi SS officer's hat on and a swastika keychain. And I was able to teach him a lot about my tribe. He was actually interested. This guy from South Carolina who hated everybody but liked me. I can't explain other than to say I approach every one of them with the idea in mind that if I can teach them something that they didn't know, maybe it opens them up to other ideas as well. And for me, I come from a matriarchal society. So all that I am and who I am comes from my mother and is because of my mother. My clan membership is from my mother. The idea of female leadership has always appealed to me. I voted for Hillary in 2016. I'm proud to say that. And, you know, I think of now we have an opportunity. We have a woman in the second most powerful office in the country. And I think if you know, Biden gives her free reign, we're going to learn some things along the way here. We're going to see what it's like to have a female in charge of, you know, something significant. And, you know, we've had female CEOs of major companies, but that's different. That's not a position of leadership of the entire country. So I'm happy to see that we have a female vice president, and I look forward to our first female president. I don't know when that's going to be, but I do believe it'll be in my lifetime.
Cool. Okay, well, I was just thinking about, you know, the idea of teaching, of something you'd like to teach. So I know that shortly Puma's going to share some healing with us. But before we get to that, Puma, would you like to share with us something that you would like us to know, a specific teaching or a specific idea today, now?
I would like to share about the power of breathing consciously. When we breathe in, we bring in all the energy of our environment, of our space, you know, whether it's worries, intense, heavy energies, or blessings. We're breathing it in, and our system has its power to transform whatever heavy energies into light, high frequency energies. And by the time we breathe out, they can become blessings. For us, that's breathing consciously. When we do our healing work, we constantly send with breath a Sami energy, which is highly refined energy. And we can think of it as love, as health, as vitality, as prosperity, abundance, energies. And we just breathe it out. But before we breathe it out, we need to breathe in. And when we breathe in the power of Mother Earth. We breathe in the power of our Apus, the mountain spirits. We breathe in the power of the elements. And that already blesses our body, blesses our physical temple. And we can transmit it consciously with our thoughts. So this is a very simple exercise. Interestingly enough, in these pandemic times, one thing that has been attacked, where we've been vulnerable, is our breathing system, as a call for us to start breathing consciously and not taking our breath for granted. So when you breathe in, you need to breathe in the power of Mother Earth, her intelligence, her life energy, how she has the power to transform everything into new life. So just breathe it in, hold it for a few seconds, and then breathe it out as blessings. Before you breathe it out, you can even think of a loved one. You can think of your family member. And you can, in this way, send powerful healing energy to your biological family, to your global family. So the power of breathing, that is the teaching I would like to share.
Thank you. Thank you. Alex?
I think the most important thing for me, particularly in the last few months and a couple of years, has been a growing awareness that deep inside of me, there's a core of wisdom that was placed there by the Creator, nurtured by the Mother, and introduced into the planet by my ancestors. And recognizing that there is this core of me, and that core is the one that is the vital core, the true core, and that is the one that connects to every living being, every rock, every mountain, every river, every valley has been enormously beneficial to me. So I teach a lot of my students, my clients, my friends, how to do that. And to do that, breath work, of course, is the first step, as Puma has rightly said. And then the second step is to keep asking yourself the question, who am I? Who is the true me? Who is the true I? Who is the true person inside of this body? And how can I recognize that in order to project it into the world? And if you do that, you automatically hook onto the loving channel of the planet and of the cosmos in general. And that's one of the great blessings of this type of meditational work.
Cool. And Byron? I'm thinking about from the non-MD side of you.
I have had patients that I have instructed to go in their backyard, take their shoes and socks off, walk around, feel the earth beneath their feet, and recognize that that is our mother. We have to take care of her. And even the most stubborn, conservative minds that I know have tried it. And they will admit that, yes, they felt something. They weren't sure what it was. Maybe it was okay. And that's part of how I introduce some American Indian spirituality into my misguided North Dakota brethren. And I refer to them that way because we're living in a time now when there is so much suspicion of institutions, of government, of everything, except they don't have suspicion for the people that are making things worse. They are flocking to them, and I have to try to understand that, and I have to try to continue to teach people who are receptive to it that there isn't just one way to live. And that's what I try to do from a non-MD perspective. And I tell them about my tribe, and I tell them about the matriarchal society that I come from, the clan kinship system, and they're amazed to find out under the clan kinship system, I have daughters who are 86 years old. And they do want to try to wrap their heads around that. So I'll explain it and write it out on paper. And then they say, why? And I say, well, so that no one is ever truly without family. No one is ever truly alone. That's why we do that.
Beautiful, thank you. Okay, well, I think that now as we are getting close to wrapping this up, I would like to invite Puma to do a little ceremony for us. Thank you.
Oh.
Thank you. Abhijit. I'm going to ask my brothers here to light up the sacred fire. I have the condor feathers. The condor is the highest flying bird on the planet, and therefore is the only being in the planet with the lightest heart of all beings on the planet. So with these condor feathers, I'm going to send powerful light energy for your hearts so that you can lighten yourself from all the heaviness you have taken on, whether you did that consciously or unconsciously. Apukuntur, kunturapuchi. Saminche kalpanche tuluncha yawarchi apukunur walkuna pachamamanyusta. Yanapari tulunchari kalpanchari lapan wayqpanaykunata. Hanaqpacha apukuna. Sumaqta paykunata k'ancharichis, qhapaqñan quriñan, allinta paykuna ñawpaqman puririnankupaq. Churi. Ukuychis. With these sacred blessings, receive the light energy to your hearts from the condor. Thank you, Jane. Thank you,
Thank you.
Alex. Thank you, Byron. One thank you to our global family.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Complete.
Seems wonderful to have the condor and the eagle here tonight. I think that's a terrific thing. I just wanted to quickly, before we finish, to ask each of you if there's anything else you would like to say tonight before our conclusion. Who would like to go first? Alex.
Yeah, I think the most important thing is to love and enjoy life. We're blessed to be here. This is such a gift. Like Puma said, the ancients wanted to live now. So even though it seems so difficult, the complexity of the problems is increasingly hard. These are really good times to be alive. And we need to remember that we need to be as happy as we can, make as many people as happy as we can. Connect to the joyfulness, spend time in nature, spend time with friends and family, and wrap our arms around something. Use your body, get in there with something.
Good, thank you. Byron?
I just want an hour with the Pope. I think I can convince him that we need to add something to the Christianity, as has been done in the past. Mm-hmm. I think I can convince him. I just need an hour with him.
Okay, we'll get right on that. If anyone listening can get on that, let's make it happen. Okay, and Puma?
I would love an hour with the Pope too. I would love to share about how in the Andes, our Catholicism is 80% Andean belief systems and only 20% Roman. And it's served because we've kept our traditions under the veil of Christianity. And it was really our ancient belief systems being alive as Catholicism. My last message tonight is realize yourselves as this divine light, a child of the sun that never rises neither sets. And what you can't transform, don't take it on. And be free and love unconditionally. Live your lives every day in service of unconditional love, because your family and your brother and your brothers and sisters throughout the planet are in constant aini with you. They're a blessing for you. So the only thing you can, in return, offer them back is your life. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's lovely. Before we sign off, I wanted to remind everybody that the world is in crisis right now, and this event tonight was set up to support our project helping Puma and his community in Peru deal with the challenges of COVID. So obviously, if anybody has the capacity to make a donation, that will go directly to his community. And I really want to salute Puma for, for being so modest about the need there, because the need there is very great, as it is in many of the Native American and other communities here. But one thing that everybody can do is to follow us on social media, share this live stream, which is recorded, and just keep in touch. And I want to sum up by saying that for me, I've taken many things away from this, but my immediate lessons are to walk barefoot upon the earth and to connect with that and to breathe and to be of service. And I would like to thank all three of these wonderful, wonderful friends, for all three are my friends, for doing this tonight. It means so much to me and to all the people at Three Generations and all the different communities we serve. And, I've known Alex for over 20 years now, or 20 Alex, and Byron for a solid 5, and Puma for a few months. But I hope that this friendship, I hope we'll all get to hug each other one day really soon. So I thank you, and I wish everybody a wonderful Giving Tuesday and holiday season, and health and peace. Thank you.
Thank you.